Well, have you ever wondered how people get visas to study in this country, to do anything in this country? Well, the waiver program and the process behind it is getting more scrutiny than ever, especially when we come to realize that a lot of nefarious characters can sort of slip through the cracks. We certainly found that out in Paris, and we found it out in Brussels, and we're finding out about it kind of all over the world. So Kevin Corke now following the White House in Paris. Hey, Kevin.
Hey, Neil, you're right about this. And what the White House announced today are new steps that the DHS, the Department of Homeland Security, will be taking now to try to add an extra layer of security for all of us. Essentially now, participants who take part in the program will be asked extra questions. There'll be more screening, trying to figure out, quite frankly, if they have made any travel to places that are deemed, for lack of a better description, terrorist-safe havens. Now, I think it's also fair to point out that we're talking about tens of millions of people that come here each and every year as a part of the program. About 20 million people, in fact, are permitted to travel to the U.S. under the program, which includes 38 countries, partners, including places like Belgium and France and the U.K. Now, White House Press Secretary Josh Earnest says this latest layer is a very positive step forward to add security to the homeland.
It means individuals are subjected to some scrutiny and to some background checks prior to boarding an airplane. So there are some significant security gains derived from this program. The question is, are there some things that we can do to strengthen that screening prior to individuals boarding an airplane?
Meanwhile, this evening, the president and French President Francois Hollande are at a private dinner. The two men obviously will have a lot to talk about, Neil, including building a coalition perhaps that might involve the Russians as the worldwide effort to combat ISIS continues. And I just want to make one super clear point about this additional program. I just want you to understand what they're really talking about, my friend, is trying to figure out if you're coming to this country, have you been places like Syria, for example. If they're not doing screening like that, as you pointed out in your lead-in, you simply don't know who they are or where they're coming from. So they're trying to add more layers to hopefully protect us all, my friend.
All right, Kevin, thank you. That's great reporting. Imagine anyone that answers in the affirmative. Well, yeah, I stopped by Syria briefly, but I was on my way to somewhere. Incredible. All right, in the meantime, what was also incredible is now the leader of Germany and the leader of Syria, different characters on agreement on this much. A lot of those refugees have made their way into Europe from Syria, but a lot of them are bad guys. In fact, a lot of them are ISIS. In fact, more than you know. To a woman who was on this long before anyone I know, Katie McFarland, Fox News national security analyst. That's Bashar al-Assad saying that. That's Angela Merkel of Germany saying that. A host of others saying that, KT. Saying that it's very likely many slipped through the cracks and are in Europe as we speak. What do you make of it?
Well, I think it's not just that. I mean, let's just say it's 1%. So it's 1 million refugees coming and 1% are bad guys. That's still a lot of bad guys. That's 1,000 bad guys. But look what happens, and it doesn't take any kind of a fortune teller to predict what's going to happen over the winter. You've got thousands of refugees, hundreds of thousands of refugees. They're going into refugee centers. They're going into shelters. Some of them are right now sleeping in the fields. What happens when the weather starts getting cold? There are no jobs for these people. There's potentially no organized housing. There's not going to be a lot of social benefits because a lot of the benefits will have been, used up. It's not a bottomless pit for this. So when they come to Europe, they don't have any place to stay. It's going to be a cold winter. They will become breeding grounds and easy pickings for recruiters. And they're already in Europe now, so it's not like you got to smuggle anybody in addition. These are already people who are going to be in pretty desperate straits by a cold winter, and they will be easy pickings for recruiters.
So the irony will be to those Western powers that have held back on bringing them in, that very behavior, maybe for very justifiable reasons, security reasons, is actually going to make the situation worse.
It's going to make it worse. I talked to a leading international businessman who's headquartered in Paris, and he said that what's happening is that as the European countries, as part of this Schengen agreement, that's the agreement whereby once you get into Europe, you can travel freely, there are no borders. Once you get into Europe, then you can move freely around the entire region. But if the Northern European countries send people home and say, look, we don't have room for you anymore, where do they go? They go back to where they first entered Europe, which is in the Baltics, in the Balkans. And that could become the new hot pot, the new chaotic place in the next 6 months is in the Balkans.
All right, KT, thank you very much. I
Thank you.
think KT McFarland,
Yeah.
we're back to these questions they're asking on these visas here, folks, by the way, as KT was speaking here. Obviously, do you have any time you've spent in Syria? I guess you had that too. Do you have any fruit with you, any vegetables? Really? Is this how we're combating terror in the middle of a climate change summit? Whatever. All right.